I make no secret of the fact that, in terms of YouTube, I'm an old man. I bought this jersey when it was the one they wore all the time. This is my, as I call it, my Calgary Flames Germany jersey, since it's the German flag colors. I liked it at the time. I can't tell you why, but I've always liked Calgary. The jerseys, the city, the fan base, for the most part. The fact that they've always been rivals against the Canucks is why I've never liked the team very much. That rivalry's died down with the fact the Canucks have died down this year, but it's still there. But I always put rivalries aside when it comes to things that are affecting an entire franchise. I've been asked about this a couple of times, and to be honest, I was waiting until I had more time to discuss it. But this weekend has been kind of a mental, because I have my first aid test on Tuesday. So every week, or every time I've done the first aid, the first 2 times anyways, we did the class from Monday to Friday, and it's very intense. And then Saturday we did the test. This time, Monday to Friday, very intense, and then it's Tuesday when I do the test. So in my brain, I'm going over all my steps, make sure I do my ABCs, okay, airways clear. And so it's really hard for me to take that, throw it aside, and go, okay, now I'm going to talk about hockey. But there are videos that I owe you guys, and this is one of them, because this is big. The NHL has fought really, really hard to keep hockey in Arizona. It has fought very hard to keep hockey in Carolina. It has fought to keep the New York Islanders in that same region when other owners probably would have looked to go somewhere else. So what's going on in Calgary is a big test. And what's going on in Calgary is a big test because I can remember a time, and I think it's in, I want to say it's in this annual. It may not be. There's an article in one of these. It's right at the start where it talks about hockey in Canada. It talks about the Canadian dollar. And it discusses how hockey is in danger in Canada. Another interesting one too is a concussion article from 2000. So 17 years ago. There's Lindros, and they're talking about concussions in the NHL. So when I hear the NHL saying, that's not an issue, that's another video I'm doing today. But that's not the Calgary issue. Anyways, when the Jets left and the Nordiques left, there was an article, and it's in one of these magazines. I just can't find it right now. It may actually be in that one. But sorry, I can go through this without the visual aid. Calgary was in trouble. Edmonton was in trouble. Ottawa was in trouble. So Vancouver was considered somewhat stable, although there was some talk about them perhaps moving to Seattle. Toronto was stable. Montreal was stable based on the size of the markets. There was no danger of Toronto moving or Montreal moving. But if you were a Canadian franchise, you were potentially on the move in the early 2000s. It was a low Canadian dollar. There were a few franchises that were struggling at the gate in terms of attendance. Franchises were on the downside of things. There was no salary cap, so you combine the no salary cap with the fact the Canadian dollar was very low, and you have a very hard time making an argument that hockey should stay in Canada based on that data. It did. It survived. Eventually, the Canadian dollar was at par with the American. Everything's great. Everything's fine. The Winnipeg Jets come back, and everything seems stable. Now, right now, the Calgary Flames are going into the playoffs. Right now, the Calgary Flames have guaranteed themselves a shot at the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs, and they deserve to be there. The Calgary Flames had goaltending issues last year. They've had goaltending issues at points this year, but the fact is, it's solidified enough for long enough that they are a playoff team. The Calgary Flames, though, are not immune to moving. They want a new stadium. The first shot was fired by Gary Bettman publicly, where he said to, I believe it was a group of businessmen, "Oh, we need a new stadium in this city." I think that's a weird thing to say. Yeah, I love Calgary. Boy, but if we were going to have an all-star game or some kind of a draft or anything in Calgary, we got to get a new stadium first. We can't have one here with the Saddle Dome. That's why Bettman gets booed when he goes out on the ice. That and the other stuff I want to talk about in the concussion video I plan to do later. Those concussion videos are the ones nobody watches. At least it seems that way. But in terms of this issue with Calgary, Bettman is absolutely persona non grata. He is absolutely public enemy number one by going and making that statement. And I mentioned it in the video when that happened. It just seemed like an out of the blue comment, like, man, we'd love to have stuff in Calgary, but that stadium. Have you seen the new one in Edmonton? That's a sweet stadium. You guys should have that here. You guys should have an arena like that here. It'd be a shame if Kansas City has a really good stadium ready to go, or maybe Seattle gets a stadium, or it'd be a shame if we had to take American money instead of Canadian money, because the Canadian dollar is down about 73 cents US, and there's cities that would probably support hockey. It would be a shame if the Battle of Alberta was a thing of the past. It'd be a shame. Bettman is slime. I've defended him. I've defended him publicly on videos, but after seeing the emails I saw this week, okay, I will never defend him again on any level. There's the players, there's the owners, and then Bettman's somewhere down below the floor in my eyes. And I'm scared with this issue because Bettman in the past has not really fought very hard to keep hockey in Canada. I'm not convinced the Jets are going to stay. I'll put it that way. And I know Winnipeg is selling out every game, and they're buying all the merchandise and everything. But I'm telling you, with the lower number of seats, and Winnipeg being kind of remote in comparison to New York, LA, all the big, and they really want big American centers. All they're waiting for, to me, it feels like all the NHL is waiting for is for a Canadian team to just dip, have some kind of instability, and then the NHL can go, oh, damn it. And we really thought hockey was going to work in Canada this time, but bad news. Going to have to move the Flames. It's just not financially viable. I agree the Saddle Dome is butt ugly. I remember when the Saddle Dome was built in the 80s, I remember thinking Saddle Dome's a weird name, and then looking at it and going, oh, it's in the shape of a saddle. Wow. Wow, that's something. And I agree that it's outdated, much like Rexall was for Edmonton, but to me there just seems to be something more at work here. And when you got ownership saying, sort of mumbling, yeah, I don't know what we'll do if we don't get a new stadium. So Calgary's always a kind of a weird ownership system. And, despite weird ownership systems, they've managed to put a good team together on the ice. And the future's bright for the Calgary Flames on the ice. And anytime I watch games in Calgary, the lower bowl is full, which Vancouver dreams of that. But all the NHL cares about is the tickets are sold. So, I mean, the lower bowl may be empty in Vancouver. Those tickets are sold. It's just season ticket holders are staying home. And that's part of the disconnect, I think, between the league and the fans. The league just goes, well, if those tickets are sold, we don't care if the fans show up. For hockey fans, we're like, what? Those lower bowl seats are empty? Come on. We want to watch the game. We want to sit there. The guys who have those tickets don't want to sit there after spending thousands of dollars on those tickets? That's ignorant. Or, they're reselling them on a website and they're not able to get the money they want, so they're like, they can sit empty. It's ignorant. And Calgary doesn't, at least what I've seen on TV, they don't appear to have that same problem. Everybody's showing up. And it's easy to do when a team's in the playoffs. But as much as you and Calgary will support a team, that doesn't help overcome what the NHL sees as the things holding Calgary back in terms of a new stadium. And when you hear Bettman saying to businessmen, it'd be nice if we had a new building, and hear an owner going, I don't know if we don't get a new building, that means you, the Alberta taxpayer, get to pay for the new building in Calgary. That's what that means. Because an owner who's going to build his own stadium builds his own stadium, finds a way to make it happen. But what I'm seeing here is potentially, and I'm not thinking now, I'm not thinking this will happen this summer. It won't happen next summer either. But I'm saying you're 2 years out. If this doesn't get resolved in 2 years, you're 2 years out from the NHL having Gary Bettman come forward and go, hockey doesn't appear to be working in Calgary. Say hello to the Seattle Metropolitans, or say hello to the Portland Beavers, or whatever team's going to come in. We're very sorry to Calgary. This just, it hurts us, but with the Canadian dollar with where it is, and with the building in Calgary where it is, hockey just doesn't work in Calgary right now, and we don't have another option in Alberta. And it moves down the coast. Maybe it moves to Kansas City. But I'm just getting that feeling looking at this, that this is the start of something. And what bothers me, usually what'll happen is, if you're a taxpayer and you go, well, shit, you've got $1 billion, go build your own arena. I don't have money to pay in taxes for a new arena. You get treated like you're not a real fan. You're not dedicated enough to the team because you're not willing to spend your tax dollars on a new arena. So when you say crazy things like, well, couldn't we put that money to a better use? Like, couldn't we support our community, or, I don't know, upgrade hospitals, or, geez, the roads out here are crap. Can we upgrade those? Can we just not use money for a building for some billionaire because he doesn't want to build one? You're a terrible, terrible human being. I've watched with Seattle that if city council or just the general public doesn't agree with spending X amount of dollars of their own money on a building, they go, we don't want to spend that. They get told, oh, I guess you don't want the Sonics back. I guess you don't want to have professional sports in Seattle then. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's funny because I'm watching Joe Louis Arena now is gone in Detroit, and now they want to get rid of the Saddle Dome, and it's weird because I remember Joe Louis being one of the premier arenas in the 80s. I remember when the Saddle Dome first came into being, and with all this hubbub and all this amazement. And it's funny how quickly that changes. How that brand new building becomes, I don't know if we like it. Sky Dome in Toronto is the biggest example for me, where all the excitement when it first came out, and then years later they went, oh man, there's so many seats in this building. This is too many. It's not quaint enough. So other American cities build new baseball stadiums, and they built them like a Fenway type atmosphere, like a community type atmosphere. And then the ones with the giant arenas go, oh, why didn't we do that? Oh, maybe we should build another one. And again, the taxpayer gets caught. So I don't know where this goes, but to me it seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. And I genuinely think, because Bettman wants hockey in Arizona. Bettman wants hockey to succeed in cities like Nashville and Raleigh, North Carolina, because he put teams there. Can't have them fail. Calgary, I don't think he has an opinion on Calgary. I don't think he'd mind if Canadian hockey teams went under. I remember in the early 2000s when the Canucks were failing at the ticket counter, and the Canadian dollar was in the crapper, and there was a real genuine feeling, maybe the Canucks are going to go to Seattle. That may happen. Ownership was selling, and there was no idea of what might happen if they sold to an American interest. That's the other thing. At some point, an owner in Calgary is going to go, this just isn't going to work. We're going to sell the team. And then, oh, crap. Because then all it takes, Kansas City's got an NHL-ready arena. All it takes is somebody who's in Missouri to go, I really want to see a team in Kansas City. The Flames are available. And the NHL looks at that and goes, well, Calgary's a nice market for us, but it's a small market. If we put a team in Kansas City, That's going to increase league revenue, and it's going to increase our visibility in the States. And not to mention the natural rivalry they'd have with St. Louis and Chicago and the Minnesota Wild. You've got all these cities that are all close together. That's going to lower the amount of travel for teams in the Central Division. And you'll be able to take a Central Division, pop them into the Pacific, or maybe we'll just have two conferences and just wipe out the divisions altogether, and we'll just do it that way. That seems to be the way people want it. And yeah, and Edmonton's got a new stadium, and they're making a lot of money thanks to that new stadium. So we're not worried about Edmonton, and we've got a lot of really good players in Edmonton. So, but Calgary, yeah, without that new building, they don't have the advantage Edmonton has. And yeah, maybe Kansas City makes sense. Maybe Cleveland makes sense. It is the beginning right now. That's why I didn't really do a video earlier this week. I wanted to wait till I had more time to discuss this. But it's the beginning. And if you are a Calgary Flames supporter, I would love to right now say, well, it's not going to happen. The NHL is going to allow a team to move. But they will. They allowed Atlanta to move because they didn't have a choice. And they went to Winnipeg because, hell, they've been bugging for a team since we moved it. But they're resisting a team going to Quebec. Publicly, no, but it's pretty obvious that there's certain franchises that could move to Quebec, and it's a win for everybody. But it's a low Canadian dollar, and then it's a matter of ownership, and I think the NHL is really, really not sold on the idea of going back to Quebec City. I think when they opened up this expansion process and Vegas said we're in, I think they really wanted a bid from Seattle. If a bid had come in from Seattle, we're getting 2 expansion teams this fall. Quebec dropped out because they knew with the Canadian dollar where it is that they would not be rewarded with an expansion franchise, so they dropped out of the process. And Brian Mulroney being a part of it really didn't inspire me with confidence in the first place. When I saw that, I was like, oh, good. We want a politician who ran the country into the ground to run the Quebec Nordiques. This is fantastic. Awesome. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I've been trying to, keep my eye on this subject. There's not been a whole lot on TSN or Sportsnet on it, but I do really think that if you're a fan of the Flames, now's the time to start fighting, because the NHL isn't going to give a lot of warning that they're going to move the team. They really aren't. The Thrashers closed their season, and they had hardly any warning during the season that this was going to happen. And then off to Winnipeg. Quebec Nordiques got eliminated from the playoffs. Off to Denver. Colorado didn't even have a team name for a while. They had the contest. So when the magazines I have for the Avalanche's first year just shows Colorado, because they didn't even have a team name picked at the time that those books went to press. The NHL has no problem moving a team like a thief in the night. But they won't do it to Arizona. They won't do it in Carolina. They won't do it in Nashville. Nashville's not a problem now, but it was at one point. They won't do it anywhere that they've expanded to since Gary Bettman became the commissioner. The exception being Atlanta, because they didn't have a choice. But Hartford, that wasn't a problem. Quebec, that wasn't a problem. Winnipeg, no problem. They didn't care. They're like, yeah, out you go. Want more money? You'd make more money in X city than you will in Arizona. Don't care, we're staying in Arizona. Expansion, where can we go? Well, we could go to Quebec. There's a built-in fan base there. There's a brand new stadium. There's a lot of excitement. We could go to Vegas, where there's potentially a fan base, but it's going to be like 40 degrees in June. It's going to be really hard to keep the ice, in good shape. Yeah, we'll go to Vegas. Well, Hamilton wanted a team, and Hamilton would support a team. You could argue that it's stretching, numbers thin, because in Canada, obviously, our cities aren't as big as they are in the States. But you know what? A team in Hamilton would not only survive, it would thrive. And the natural hatred between Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton would be fantastic, and you'd have all kinds of amazing games. It'll never happen. And people always say, oh, the Leafs and the Sabres would block it. Sabres, maybe. The Leafs wouldn't and shouldn't. The Leafs would relish the idea of having another team in Ontario. Look what the Senators have done for the Leafs. That geographical rivalry has been fantastic for the Leafs. And it would be fantastic if there was a team in Hamilton, too. The NHL would rather have teams in the States than in Canada. So let me know what you guys think. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And I really hope that Calgary finds some way to make this work. Because the rumblings don't look good. And that sucks. Because Calgary absolutely is an NHL city. Belongs in the NHL, should stay in the NHL. That should never be a question of whether or not the Calgary Flames survive. So, that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all again soon.